Hi, my name's Adam. Welcome to the channel. Thanks for joining us today. Today we have a special guest, Erin Bury. Erin is co-founder of Willful. Willful is an online will service. So they do wills, power of attorneys, and whatnot. And Erin and her husband, Kevin, started Willful a few years back. But now it's quite a one of the largest online digital will services in Canada. I think it's important to learn about Willful, online wills, and just the changing landscape of getting a will done. A lot of you watching this video do not have a will in place and need to get one in place. And if that's you, check out willful.co. We'll put the link below, and we also have a 20% off coupon. So we'll link that below as well to help you get started on your will, power of attorney, and all of that. So let's welcome to the channel, Erin Bury. So Erin, thanks for joining us today. So I just want to talk about digital will. So maybe explain what a digital will is, how it works, will it hold up in court, all these questions that a lot of our viewers have.
For sure. Well, first, thanks for having me, Adam. And maybe I'll just start with what the method has been traditionally for executing a will. So up until December 1st, 2021, a will anywhere in Canada had to be executed on paper, which means it had to be printed out and signed with an actual pen on paper. And as of December 1st, British Columbia became the first province to allow for fully digital wills. So what does that mean? It means that instead of having to print it out on paper, you still could if you wanted to, if you're a fan of paper, but you can choose to execute it online, which means you can sign it online using a digital signature. You can have your witnesses witness it virtually over a Zoom call like we're doing right now. And you can also store that will online. So instead of having to have that paper copy in a filing cabinet, you can actually, store it in your email account. If you send it to your executor, you could store it on your desktop, in the cloud, wherever you'd like, and wherever it might be more accessible to your family, because finding a will is often very difficult. In terms of the requirements, there aren't a lot of specific rules around, which platform you have to use for electronic signatures. At Willful, we have a partnership with DocuSign. So we're helping folks execute their wills via DocuSign in a pilot that we're running right now. And our hope is to build that into the platform itself. So it would be really easy to not only create your will on Willful, but sign it, witness it, and store it on our platform. So we're getting there, but for now, you can take a will from Willful and execute it digitally, DocuSign it, get on Zoom with your witnesses, or you can create a will via any other method. So if you worked with a lawyer, if you worked with a notary, if you, purchased or found a PDF form from the BC government, any type of will other than a handwritten will can be executed and stored online. Now, you asked if these wills would hold up in court. It's a great question. And maybe I'll explain that any will can have a claim brought against it in court. It doesn't matter what type of will or whether it was executed online or offline. So this really doesn't change that. The law now says digital wills are absolutely as legally valid as wills that are printed and signed on paper. So can your will have a claim brought against it? Sure. If you have that random nephew or long lost friend who's going to try to come after your riches, they probably won't care whether you executed it digitally or on paper. But the onus is going to be on those folks to actually prove that you had an intention to leave them something. So that really is only a concern if you're maybe disinheriting someone from your will or you have a contentious relationship. And in that case, you can work with a lawyer to actually write in language to your will outlining why you're specifically leaving someone out.
And that's a question I have for you, and a question we get quite often is, does a digital will make sense for me? Like, is there a kind of a divide of, my life is simple, so maybe a digital will or an online will is more simple, so I can do it that way. Let's say someone that's been married a few times, kids from different marriages, can that whole structure be done on a digital will, or are they better to see a lawyer, or kind of where does that stand?
First, I'll kind of delineate between an online will and a digital will. So when we talk about digital wills, all we mean is a will that has been executed digitally, signed online. So that could be a will that was drafted by a lawyer or any method. When we talk about an online will platform like Willful, that's a will that's generated online. So it generates a PDF document and can be executed online, but could also be printed on paper. So think of it like TurboTax. If you have a really simple tax situation, you're probably going to use TurboTax because it guides you through the process, it's affordable, and you don't really have any complex needs that would lead you to want to work with an accountant. Now, as your life gets a bit more complex, let's say you start a business or you have some intricacies to your financial situation, then you'll probably shell out for that accountant knowing that TurboTax might not be able to support your needs. It's very similar with Willful. We cater to folks who have pretty simple situations. They have a spouse or they're single, they have kids, they have assets here or abroad, but they don't really have a lot of specific special cases. Examples of that could be what you mentioned, which is, I have a blended family and I want to create a spousal trust because I want everything to go to my spouse when they pass away, but I want it to go to my children when that spouse passes away so that I can ensure my children are protected. Another example might be having a child with a disability. There's a certain type of trust associated with that Willful doesn't accommodate. So there's quite a few complex scenarios that would lead you to want to work with a lawyer. And you can always reach out to our support team and we'll be the first to tell you Willful is not the right fit, because really our mission is to make sure people have documents that are right for their life situation.
For sure. For most people, what you guys have to offer is a great service. And that's why we brought you on, right? Like we've had members of our team here use Willful and have been very happy with both the experience and product, the support along the way. So this is a good option. And a lot of people aren't even aware of it. Like when people think, I got to update my will, I got to, walk into a lawyer's office and meet with them and spend a couple hours with them. And it's a headache. It's the last thing people want to do, right? Is going to, an oak-filled office of lawyers. So I guess going back to the digital signatures in BC, is there a timeline for when the rest of the world catches up, or is BC like that far ahead of everyone else?
No, unfortunately, there is no timeline, Adam. This is something that we've been lobbying the government for since the beginning of COVID. When COVID hit, we saw a big uptick in users on Willful because all of a sudden that thing that had been falling down the to-do list for years became really important. It kind of reminded us, right, that the unexpected can happen anytime and that you should have things like an emergency fund and life insurance and your power of attorney and will documents in place. So we said, to the Ontario Attorney General, how are people supposed to get their wills executed when we're not even supposed to be getting within 6 feet of people, and your witnesses can't be beneficiaries of your will? So likely not the people that you live with or very, very close family. Fortunately, BC has been a real thought leader in Canada, but there haven't been any indications of other provinces following suit yet. If you look to the US, there are several states that allow for digital wills. So I think BC is the first domino to fall, and I'm hopeful that anyone watching from other provinces will be able to execute digitally soon. But until then, it's all paper, baby.
So if someone goes on, you guys have 3 different packages on your website. Roughly how long does it take? What do they get as part of that package? Maybe just walk through that process. Because again, I think a lot of people in their head think will, and it's this complicated process. And it doesn't have to be, and most of the time it's not. I know when I went through it with my wife, it was very simple. So just maybe walk through that process and rough timeline and what they get. Like what is a will and a power of attorney and the documents that you would get at a very high level.
I think there's this misconception that putting together a will is this cumbersome, time-consuming process where you have to gather your tax returns and your financial statements and have an idea of your net worth. And in reality, a will is a very simple document that outlines who is going to close up your estate when you pass away and who's going to get your stuff. It's really a series of pretty simple questions. The hardest part, honestly, is you making those decisions and knowing who you want to put in those roles. So the platform itself from start to finish takes about 15, 20 minutes, as long as you know the choices that you want to input. But you can start the process and come back at any time, and your progress is saved along the way. So with our $99 package, you get just a will. You can update that for free anytime, which is great because you want to keep it up to date as your life changes. Our middle package is $149. That comes with a will and both power of attorney documents. Now, a power of attorney document says who would make decisions for you if you were incapacitated due to illness or injury. So not the fun one to think about. It's the if I was in a coma document. But again, medical professionals say it's almost even more important than a will because it gives someone the ability to speak for you when you can't speak for yourself. And then the family plan is essentially just that times 2. So it's $250. It covers you and your spouse. You each get those wills and power of attorney documents because it is like tax returns. Even if you're married, you do have to have those individual documents.
I always say power of attorney is, I would agree, it's more important than the will, in my opinion. It's like disability insurance versus life insurance. If you pass away, you're not a huge burden to your family, hopefully. Whereas if you become disabled, i.e. power of attorney, there's more of a cost. Like if I become disabled, there's way more cost to my family than if I just had passed away. So I think doing the full package obviously makes a whole ton of sense.
It's interesting that you say, hopefully I'm not a burden to my family when I pass away, because unfortunately, so many of us don't have the conversations that make that process easier. My husband and I started Willful because his uncle passed away unexpectedly, and he actually had a will, but he had never discussed those other things outside the will, whether he wanted to be buried or cremated, where his life insurance papers were, and all of the other important financial documents, because he managed the finances in the home, what type of ceremony he wanted, and any preferences for that. So it was that experience of trying to just guess, assume, make choices that were the best for him that really led us to want to make that process easier. And so when you create your will, you also have the option to include funeral and burial wishes. And we just launched a new feature called Asset List, which allows you to build out a list of all of your assets and to store that document with your will. And that's great for things like digital assets, maybe Bitcoin or investment accounts, because your family doesn't always know where you actually hold these assets. And otherwise, they just sit there making the bank's money on interest.
For sure. And I always tell like my wife and I, we do it quarterly where I create a list because I manage family assets here and we have stuff, a bit all over the place and a lot going on with the business and that. So I kind of have the list with assets and password where stuff is, and we update it quarterly for that reason. I think what we get from a lot of our clients is they ask, when we put a financial plan together, they're like, do you cover estate planning? And they always kind of imply, do you do a will? And we always say, no, we don't do a will, but we'll kind of help guide the asset in the right direction. Estate planning is two pieces. Piece number one, which I think is very important, or the most important, would be the will power of attorney, what you guys do at Willful. Because that says, like, here's where things go when I die. Our job on our end of the second part of the estate is, how do we maximize what's there when you do die? Like, give you enough while you're
100%.
living, but there's going to be X amount when you die. How do we maximize that? How do we make sure the most amount goes to your loved ones, charity, whoever you want to leave money to, versus CRA? Because with little estate planning on this side, more goes to CRA on this side.
It's a great point. And that's really the role that financial planners and professionals can play. To your point, Willful says, who gets your stuff? It doesn't say how to pass it on efficiently. And that's not something that we're experts in. And so we rely on partnerships with great folks like you to be able to educate clients on that. And we actually just got the results of a survey back that we did with Angus Reid that said 68% of British Columbians do not know how their estate is taxed after they pass away. So it's clear that there's a huge knowledge gap when it comes to what do I pay taxes on? I'm not sure people understand how joint ownership of assets might affect that, how charitable gifts, how gifts while you're alive. So to your point, there's a whole other talk that we could do just on that, but that's really the expertise that your team can provide and something that has to be done outside of the Willful platform.
Well, Erin, thank you so much for joining us today. If you are looking to get a will done, power of attorney, need to update your will, or have any questions, willful.co, we'll put their link below as well. They have a ton of resources, information, articles. If you're not sure where to start with a will, what an executor is, all those details, check out Willful. They're a great service and they will meet all your needs that you need. So Erin, thank you so much for joining us. And hopefully we'll get you back on here another day.
Thanks, Adam. Really appreciate it.